don't wait until you get in a position to where you have to. The best time to get yourself together is when you have something and you're in a position to where you have leverage. Leverage is key. Everybody's busy. That's 2 clicks, 3 clicks. And that could be the difference between you changing the trajectory of your family's life or not. You have to treat yourself as you're your own Fortune 500 company. You are your own CEO. So how are you managing that?
Welcome, everybody. I'm excited to have a conversation today about career success and transitions with Tedrick Bolton. And I'll let him introduce himself, but just know this, that he's been very successful in his career, continues to be successful. And we asked if he'd be willing to share some of that success with our audience today. Ted, welcome.
Thank you so much, David, and always willing to help a great friend.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Maybe we could start and just kind of tell the folks sort of a little bit about your background, who you are and your background. Why don't we start from there?
Yeah, so Ted Bolton again. I've had the opportunity to do multiple roles within my company, my current organization, which is a Fortune 10 company within the Fortune 500. I've been with the organization for 13 years now. I kind of like to split it in half to say in my first 6 years with the organization, I had the opportunity to spend time leading what we would call central fill organizations for some of our bigger retail national accounts. Back half of those 6 years, leading up to the 12-year mark with my organization, I spent time leading some of our full line distribution centers. So you think about any facility that services hospitals, clinics, anything related to healthcare to improve patient outcomes. Had the opportunity to lead two distribution centers in 2 different markets. And as of this past or last August, had the opportunity to transition to more of a customer facing opportunity to spend time leading more of a global account team. So that's currently what I'm doing now, and enjoying the different vastness and the dynamic environment of the world of pharmacy.
Excellent. I appreciate that intro. Can you describe for us what prompted you in your most recent career transition? What was the thing that sort of said, all right, this is next? Were you on the trail? Did the opportunity come? Maybe it was part of the corporate culture, but can you give us a sense? What were the factors that helped determine what was next for you?
Yeah, and I think it starts with, as an individual, what is your goal? Like what actually do you want to achieve in your career? And so I say for me, my goal is to be a president of a business unit. So thinking about, okay, my goal is to be a president of a business unit. What are the skill sets that I need to obtain in order to put me on a pathway to be able to do so? And so as I kind of shared in my background, majority of my career was in the operations realm. Having the operational mindset to be able to get things done, being able to deliver on schedule, on time, to ensure that at the end of the day, you're the last mile between a script product being able to be delivered to a pharmacy. But on the front side of that comes down to setting strategy. What is your customer orientation? What are some of the challenges that your customers are facing upstream that can help with aligning with how you go about doing the things that I was doing downstream? And so that was a gap in my professional experience that I knew that I need to close in order to continue on the trajectory of, okay, Ted, you say you want to do this, then what are you going to do about it? And so it came down to me saying, okay, I need to take my career in my own hands and figure out what are the opportunities out there and go and seek those experiences that would allow me to be able to stay on track for what I ultimately want to do for myself in my career.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned kind of the gap. You were looking at your own career and say, hey, if this is where I'm headed, this is the gap that I need to fill. These are the experiences, the skills, and that we need, right? And we coach our clients on this all the time. The other side of that, of course, is from an employer perspective, there's that talent gap on the employment side, right? So when they're looking for somebody to fill that role, they're doing the same analysis, right? They're
Yeah.
looking back and saying, okay, this is the gap that we have in our management team, for instance. This is the gap that we have for this new division in terms of leadership. And then they go look for candidates that fill that gap, people who have those skills, have those experiences, that functional expertise, that industry expertise to fill that gap. So it's great because you were advocating for yourself and also being proactive to say, this is where I want to be. This is what's next.
Yeah, I would also add to that as well is that, there's also the component of, hey, this is where I want to go. But along the way, who are your mentors and sponsors that are going to give you that really raw feedback and help you with building those relationships so that, yes, you can recognize that you have a gap. Who are those individuals along the pathway that are going to say, okay, hey, this individual, yes, they only have experience in this vertical, but they have transferable skills that allow you to be able to go and do another thing. And you have to make sure that you're doing both, recognizing where your gaps are, understanding where you want to be in your career, what type of who is in your circle, like, your network, your network is your net worth, and understanding that if you don't have the network that's also helping educate you on things that you just don't know, and you got to be able to have those that mix of drive versus network that will ultimately help you to ascend to the levels that you want to go. And you cannot do it by yourself. I don't care who you are, how talented you are, you cannot do it by yourself.
Yeah. So what you're saying there is career success is a team sport, right?
Absolutely.
Not only do you not have to go it alone, you shouldn't go it alone. So can we
Absolutely.
drill down into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
You had mentioned mentors, right?
Mhm.
And mentorship. How did you find your mentors?
It's just essentially by being willing to be vulnerable enough to ask questions. I've been lucky to be a part of an organization that you have leaders that are willing to help you if you show interest, that you want to be helped, and that you show that you're coachable, and that you will take the advice that they're giving once you set up the time on their calendar and actively act upon it. And actively act upon it means, hey, sir, ma'am, or sir, I appreciate your time and you gave me this feedback on this day. Since you've given me that feedback, this is what I've done with that feedback, and circling it back around with them to say, hey, I've done what you showed me to do or told me to do. What else do you think that I could do to enhance upon what you told me initially? You gotta you gotta communicate, you gotta follow up, and you gotta finish. In any realm or any career field that you're in, you have got to finish, right? But you can't finish if you don't follow up. If you can't follow up, if you don't communicate appropriately. So you gotta always work in that realm to ensure that regardless of who you're dealing with or what process or relationship, you got to do those things in order for you to be able to be successful. And if you're doing it more times than not saying that we're all perfect, you will end up being successful.
I've had several conversations with clients over the past couple of weeks when we were talking about mentorship and career success. And the a couple of times it's come out that sometimes you have the more formal mentors where you have that relationship with them, and I want to come back to that.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have the informal because you can also learn what not to do, right?
Hmm.
So you don't want to emulate every habit that someone has in a leadership role, because you've seen leaders make mistakes, and then you've seen them either own those mistakes or maybe not own those mistakes, and then you take that and you say, okay, well, I know what I'm not going to do when I'm in that same role, right? So it's interesting. Those mentors can be all around us, and they don't necessarily need to be formal. When you have these conversations with those mentors, that the people who agree, yes, I'm willing to be your coach. The first question you said, am I coachable?
Hmm.
Right? So you were coachable in that process. And then how do you demonstrate that? Well, what you said was, because I took action, I did what they said, and I followed up with them to communicate that. And at that point, that more formal mentor is probably much more likely to invest more time and energy in you because you're listening and you're
Yes.
taking action. And maybe they give you a piece of advice and you decide not to take it, but you're having that conversation with them, as opposed to, all right, Ted, we've met 3 times now, and all the things we've talked about, I'm going back through my notes, and you haven't done any of it. Well, what's their incentive to keep going? They would rather move on to somebody else who will listen to them, will take their advice and take that up. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely. And I think the most important thing too in your career journey is you have to learn how to get out of your own way. And I think that once you learn how to get out of your own way as well and understand that leadership can be lonely, man. And that's when I was kind of alluding to the fact that um it's a two-way street. You have to be able to you want to be attracted to like-minded individuals that have some of the same values and morals and things like that from afar, that you can glean and be able to say, hey, I think I can pair well with this person. I think that they have some of the traits really that I can utilize to help accentuate that. But sometimes you can think about, like, as we're on our own career journey, and when I say get of our own way, we can say, well, they may be too busy, or they may not have time, or so on and so forth. But you don't know until you get out of your own way and just put the time on the calendar. You think everybody that's in a role now that they sought after years ago, or that they that they did that they didn't have people that was in their work stream that didn't have time. Everybody's busy. But if you take out the time and willingness to invest in yourself by just putting time on the calendar, think about, that's 2 clicks, 3 clicks. And that could be the difference between you changing the trajectory of your family's life or not.
Interesting. I like the 2 clicks. Were there any surprises or unexpected challenges that you encountered during your transition into your most recent role?
The things that were difficult was speed. When you come from an operational mindset, you want things to be done yesterday. And sometimes when you're operating a little bit farther upstream, it takes time because you have to get those right stakeholders involved, and you have to make sure that everybody's checking off and rowing in the same direction. And that takes time because people may not truly understand what the mission is, uh, and how they can play a part in that. So the power of influence becomes even more valuable as you step away from front lines. It's how can you leverage your expertise of being on the front line to now seeing what the pervasive needs are to influence in a different way, to get things done. And so it can be challenging at times, for sure,
Mhm.
but a great opportunity.
What about so this was an internal, right, within the organization, you
Mhm.
were making the move. Uh, what did you have to do from a personal branding perspective? What about your resume? Did you do things with your resume?
Yeah.
Did you do anything with your LinkedIn profile? Like, was there anything else that, can you
Yeah.
talk to us about that?
Yep. So and that's a great question. So, you know, there are always times in our career when we say that we're always too busy. We need to update our resume, but we never do. And typically, what I've seen, unfortunately, is that people only look to update their resume when there's a job that's up and they want to apply for it, or they lost a job. And so, again, thinking about where I wanted to go, I knew that my document that I had for myself did not represent where I wanted to go. And so I reached out to, um, your organization for help. And it was just me going on Google and searching, like, who are the best uh, companies that can help with resume writing, like really branding, personal branding, and branding myself in a way that, heck, when people go and search on LinkedIn or internally, whenever I update my resume, people can say, like, wow, who is this guy? Like, I need to speak to that guy. And I knew that it wasn't where I needed to be. So are reaching out to ERW to say, hey, I need help. I'm not actively looking for a job, but who knows what's out there that I just don't know, that because of my documents not where it needs to be. I don't know. People are out there are looking for me as a talent. And so my LinkedIn profile, like, and so partnering with your team and partnering with ERW to get my resume where it needed to be, my LinkedIn profile where it needed to be, and it changed. It helped me be not get ready, helped me to stay ready, and that's the key in the world
Hmm.
of corporate America. You know, you have to be ready to pivot at any point in time, and you have to be show that you're willing to invest in yourself before others will invest in you. And that me partnering with ERW was an investment that I was willing to bet on myself to ultimately show others that I'm a prime candidate for a lot of different roles, whether that's internally or externally. I can ball, I can play. And my document and my profile needed to show that I can play. And when I remember looking at my draft when I got it, I was like, dang, is this me? I didn't, you know, I was surprised that it was me, but I needed that shock and awe for myself because again, my document wasn't where it needed to be. But when I got it and able to show it and show what was able to do on LinkedIn, it helped both internally and now, you know, you see where you get your name is mentioned or you're in so many searches a day or a week. And, you know, people are pulling those keywords and those subjects and we all need that. Who doesn't want to feel wanted? Like, come
Yeah.
on. And that's important.
A quick interruption to the video. We have a favor to ask. If you're finding the content that we produce on this channel helpful, would you please do us the favor and click the subscribe button? This really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm, and it lets them know that we're providing helpful content that could also help others in the process. So again, if you would just take a moment, click that subscribe button, we'd really appreciate it. Okay, now back to the video. Yeah.
But I would say the key to that is don't wait until you get in a position to where you have to. The best time to get yourself together is when you have something and you're in a position to where you have leverage. Leverage is key. And if you don't have leverage or options, it's like having good credit. When you have good credit, you can go to do a lot of things.
Yeah,
But when
right.
you
It gives you, and I think that's a really good point. I jotted down a couple things you said. You know, stay ready, right? Don't just get ready, but stay ready. Like be ready to pivot, be ready for those opportunities, and willing to invest in yourself so that you start to see that people look at you at another level of professionalism because you've
yeah,
made that investment. So yeah, that's really good. And I like your leverage is key, right? That's
yeah,
when you've got options, you've got leverage there, which is great.
yeah. And the other thing that I would just add to you is I had an opportunity to take part in a training. And it was something that changed the trajectory of the way I think about my career. When I talk to you about like what is it that I want to do when I say when I want to grow up, and that's to be a president of a business unit, right? But this gentleman told me once before, he was like, you need to treat you need to treat yourself as if you're your own Fortune 500 company. Your employer is someone that you're partnering with to help you get something done. But first and foremost, you have to treat yourself as you're your own Fortune 500 company. You are your own CEO. So how are you managing that? And so that kind of also leads into the same conversation. It starts with, do you treat yourself as if you're your own Fortune 500 company? Does that mean that you're not going to invest in updating your resume and your profile so that people understand and know who you are? I mean, technology is too great now for you to settle on not doing that. So you got to act on stuff like that.
Right. And we refer to being the CEO of your own career.
Yes.
So you are your chief career officer for yourself,
Yeah.
right? And this is back to your point about advocating for yourself and investing in yourself and understanding where your gaps are and then also positioning it. And you did say, you know, when you got that first draft back and you're like, wow, is this me? It's really interesting to me. And not so, I mean, we've now worked with thousands and thousands of leaders with their personal branding and developing their profiles. And the number of times, I guess it's not surprising anymore, where people say, wow, I look great, right? Or I would hire me. We hear that a lot, right? I would hire myself based on this.
Mhm.
And I think there is something to, we even work with marketing professionals who say, look, all I do all day long is position products and services and companies. That's what I do. But when it comes to myself, I struggle with that.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here for, to help with that. So it's good to hear that. Let's talk about the interview process. Can you
Mhm.
walk us through what was that process, right? This was an internal opportunity. What did it look like? Were there any in particular challenging moments or anything like that? Can you give us a little bit on that end?
Yeah, I think interviewing can always be tough, because you can prepare so much for, like you can prepare so much to only have, 5 or 6 questions, right? And you got to be really succinct to take all of the information that you're preparing for and to be able to elaborate based on 6 or 7 questions and be able to really streamline that information to ultimately help the interviewees understand where you come from. And so, yeah, I would say that, I've had being that I'm internal, it helps um, that people know my brand because of the work or the seeds that I planted prior to that. But it's how do you articulate that so that they understand, like, yeah, I see what the document's great, the package that I put together is great, but how do I articulate that, and do I know the nuances enough to where I can explain it to a 2-year-old, um, and they understand like the gravity of what some of these words mean on paper. And that's always a challenge and always something that you should strive to do whenever you're interviewing, that the interviewees should be knowing, like at a elementary level, like the impact of what this is and how this changed the trajectory of X, whenever it came down to the result of the situation that was presented to you. Um, and I would say that having the opportunity to go through the interview process with executive resume writing, it did help me with that. You get a chance to look at yourself on camera and, hey, this is how I'll answer this question. It really helps. It also helps with having the question documentation, like what is the company asking for? Do you really know what the issues are? Like, it helps you really dive deep into whatever subset or job that you're trying to do. And that, for this particular role, it was a different business unit within my organization. But by having a guide to help me with trying to answer some of those questions, by the time the interview came, it was just flow. It was just flow. And the other thing that you have to take into account whenever you're interviewing is it's your story. Nobody can tell you your story like you can. And so make sure you tell your story in a way based on the preparation that you had, so that your story sticks out on top. Hey, at the end of that interview, you should be the bestseller. This is your book. And so that's how I like to think about interviewing it. That's how I approached it. And luckily enough, I got the opportunity to be able to go and lead a dynamic team that I'm leading now, and I'm thankful to be doing so.
Yeah, that's great. I also appreciate that you talk about it. It's your story, right? Again, oftentimes when I'm coaching clients on the interview strategy side of things, I say put yourself on the other side of the table, right? And think about, there's 2 finalists for a role, and now you've got the hiring committee that's working on trying to come up with the decision. And who do you think's got the leg up? The person who's got, and maybe both of them have polished resumes, and that's great. But is it the person that sort of went through, kind of bullet points in answering their question, or the person who could tell a story that answered the question? Because we're wired, right? We're wired as humans for the story, and
Yeah.
people are more likely to engage when you tell the story. They're more likely to remember it. They're
Yeah.
also more likely to recall it when it comes to the decision process, right? Well, Ted,
Yeah.
but wasn't Ted the guy who,
Yeah.
right? And telling that has impact, and it's impact beyond the interview, right? It's after
Yeah.
the interview you don't know the ripple effect of the
Yeah.
stories that you told. So if you get really good at telling your career success story, or talking about what we like to call the career success proposition, right?
Hmm.
The success that you've had in your career up to this point, that's really what your next employer is looking for.
Yeah.
Ted might be a great guy, but that's not why we're hiring. We're hiring because we've got this talent gap that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And in that story that he told, he's demonstrated the success that we're looking for the person in this role. So I
Yeah.
really like that you brought up the story side of things.
Yeah.
Looking back at your most recent transition, what are the most important lessons that you learned?
Always be willing to take a left or a right, meaning, hey, it's okay to take a lateral for the right experiences. And sometimes in corporate America, you don't you it's it can be you have to in order for you to go to do a vertical, you have to do a left or right to gain those experiences that put you in line for the next opportunity. And so being okay to do that, it's okay to do that. And I've seen and know people who've taken two laterals, but it's the experiences that they've gained in those laterals that it has helped them ascend to levels higher than the role that they thought they were going to get or they wanted. That would have been a vertical. And so those that is something that you have to be careful, so you don't want to do too many laterals, but be okay to go and get those experiences that will help you prepare for that bigger role. So you have to step out to step up.
Love it. Step out to step up. And earlier you were mentioning about your own gap in your experience, that if you want to go to where if you want to get to where you want to go, you need to fill that in. And so sometimes those lateral moves can do exactly that, right? They can give you
Yeah.
that experience that you're missing, even though it doesn't feel like a significant promotion. It's the thing that fills in that gap that then gives you that opportunity the next time around. Based on your experience, Ted, what advice would you give to other senior level folks that are contemplating making a change? And in this case, within a large, let's call it a Fortune 1000 organization.
Mhm.
Any other thoughts or advice that you'd give them?
Yeah, do an honest inventory. You have to do an honest inventory and be honest with yourself to say, like, where am I today? Where do I want to go? Yeah, like sometimes we as leaders or within organizations, and whether you're a leader or not, you don't take that time to do an honest inventory of yourself. You become so consumed with doing what you're doing day to day. Take a step back and understand, like, okay, what's happening around me? Like, where is my business going? What channel right now is getting the most margin within my organization? Okay, what is that channel? What do I know about that channel? How do I position myself to be where the action is happening? And I may have the skill set to go and add that value there, but it goes back to now, once you start to say, I have the skill set to add the value there, what relationships do I have in that channel that will allow me to get an up close and personal view to be able to say, what does the day to day look like? Like, what does it really mean to be a part of this function within this organization? Step back, understand who you are and where you want to go. Really be honest with yourself. Who's in your circle that's going to be real with you to tell you yes and or no, but and and if you don't have those individuals in your corner that you can trust and that you can confide in and that will help you connect the dots, then you are dependent on your direct leader to be the sole source of your career journey. And that could be, depending on who your leader is, that can be good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
understanding that you are ultimately relegating yourself to let one person control the trajectory of your career. And to me, that's not options.
Yeah, yeah. Your comment earlier, right? About leverage, and part of that leverage is having those options, having those relationships, having people that you can, like you said, they're going to give it to you straight. This is
Yep.
what's going on. But you also said be where the action is. And that's a conversation I've had dozens of times, right? Where people are talking about, well, hey, I might need to leave my organization. And I ask the question, well, okay, but you're in one area of that organization. What's the fastest growing area? Where are the biggest investments being made in the organization? Oh, well, yeah, that's over here. Have you considered that? Well, no, but I'm over here to, sure, today that's what you are, but take Ted's advice, right? Sometimes the lateral move makes perfect sense. If you can lateral move to where the action is, that could be an amazing career move, right? And that's a very important decision. And then if you have people in the area where the action is, now you can get the inside scoop, and you can understand the politics. You can understand the investments. You can understand everything that goes with that.
Absolutely,
So yeah,
man.
great advice. Thank you for sharing with that.
No
Well,
problem.
Ted, I just want to sincerely thank you for investing the time here and sharing with our audience your transition and the lessons learned and some great nuggets of advice here for somebody who's looking to make a similar transition or maybe something very different, but maybe it just lands with them just right. So they say, I've heard that before, but now I really heard it this time. And then they take action on it. Right. So just like you were saying before, from a mentor, right? You need to be taking the advice and putting it into play so that now you can take advantage of that thing that maybe you already knew, and sometimes you just need to hear it again. And now finally it sinks in and says, "Hey, I'll take advantage of it." So I appreciate very much you sharing with us today.
Again, thank you for your time. It's a pleasure chatting with you, and hopefully our conversation today inspires someone to go out and get to work to achieve their goals and aim for the sky, and if nothing else, reach and hang out with the stars.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. And thanks everybody for investing some time with us. If you're looking for help with your professional brand, you can visit us at executiveresumewriters.com, and we're happy to have a conversation and see if we might be able to help. Again, Ted, thank you. Thanks everybody. We hope you got value from today.